strange man entered the office. He was tall and had a creepy smile on his face. I tried to stay professional and asked him how I could assist him. He didn't answer me and instead walked around the office, examining the furniture and decorations. I began to feel uneasy and wanted to get him out of the office as soon as possible. I asked him again how I could assist him, and he finally spoke. He said, "I heard you talking about your language learning journey. How convenient it must be to learn from anywhere and anytime with Babbel. Do you know what I do with my language skills?" My heart began to race as I realized I was alone in the office with this creepy man. I nervously asked him what he meant, and he replied, "I use my language skills to talk to the dead. And they always have something interesting to say." I froze in fear as he continued to approach me. I tried to run out of the office, but he grabbed my arm and whispered in my ear, "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. You'll be my next language partner." I managed to break free from his grip and ran out of the office. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my throat. I didn't stop running until I was a few blocks away, and I was sure that he wasn't following me. As I caught my breath, I looked back at the office building, wondering how I had managed to attract the attention of such a dangerous man. I realized that it was probably because I had talked about my language learning journey on the company's social media page. I had never thought that something as innocent as that could put me in danger. Shaken and scared, I called the police and reported what had happened. They assured me that they would do everything in their power to catch the man. They also advised me to be careful and to stay away from any suspicious individuals. After the incident, I couldn't bring myself to go back to work. I quit my job and moved to another city, hoping to leave the terrifying experience behind. But the memory of that man and what he had said to me continued to haunt me. I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was still out there, watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike again. As the weeks passed, I started to feel more and more paranoid. I would jump at every sound, and I would always look over my shoulder, afraid that he was following me. I had trouble sleeping at night, and I would often have nightmares about him. I tried to talk to my coworkers about what was happening, but they all seemed oblivious to the situation. They would just brush me off, saying that I was being paranoid and that I needed to calm down. It was like they didn't want to believe that something bad was happening in our workplace. I started to take self-defense classes in my spare time, hoping that it would make me feel more confident and safe. But every time I saw him in the office, my heart would race and my palms would sweat. I knew that I needed to do something, but I didn't know what. One day, I was alone in the office again when he came in. I tried to keep my distance, but he approached me, smiling. "How's your language learning going?" he asked. I tried to be polite, but I couldn't hide my fear. "Please leave me alone," I said. He didn't seem to hear me. "I have a surprise for you," he said. "I brought in a special language book for us to study together. It's in my car. Why don't you come with me to get it?" My instincts told me to run, but I didn't want to make a scene. I reluctantly followed him out to the parking lot. As we walked towards his car, I noticed that there was no one else around. The parking lot was empty. Suddenly, he turned to me and grabbed my arm. "You're not going anywhere," he said. I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He dragged me towards his car, and I realized with horror that he had locked the doors. He started to drive, and I had no idea where he was taking me. My mind raced as I tried to come up with a plan. I knew that I needed to escape, but how? Finally, we arrived at a secluded cabin in the woods. He pushed me inside and locked the door behind us. I was trapped. He started to speak to me in a language that I didn't understand, and I knew that I was in serious trouble. I tried to stay calm, but my mind was racing. Days turned into weeks, and I was held captive in that cabin. He would come in and out, bringing me food and water, but always making sure that I was alone. I tried to think of ways to escape, but there was no way out. The windows were barred, and the doors were always locked. One day, he came in with a book. "We're going to learn a new language today," he said. "It's called the language of fear." I didn't want to learn his twisted language, but I knew that I had to play along if I wanted to survive. He started to teach me phrases, like, "I am scared," and, "Please let me go." I repeated them back to him, hoping that he would believe me. But he didn't. He just smiled and said, "You're doing so well. Soon you'll be fluent in the language of fear." I knew that I had to find a way to escape. I started to look for weaknesses in his plan, hoping that I could use them to my advantage. One day, he left the key to the cabin door on the kitchen counter. It was the first time that I had seen it since I had been locked up. I knew that this was my chance. I waited until he was gone, and then I grabbed the key and ran to the door. I unlocked it and ran as fast as I could into the woods. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I had to get as far away from him as possible. I could hear him chasing me, but I didn't stop. My mind was consumed with thoughts of escape. I thought about quitting my job, moving to a new city, and changing my name. But I knew that wouldn't solve the problem. He could find me anywhere. One day, I mustered up the courage to confront him. I waited until the salesman was out of the office, and I called him into the conference room. I sat across from him, my heart racing as I tried to keep my voice steady. "I need to talk to you about something," I said. "I don't feel comfortable with the way you've been acting around me. I want you to leave me alone." He looked at me with cold, dead eyes. "What are you talking about?" he said, feigning innocence. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "You've been following me, you've been watching me, and you've been making me feel very uncomfortable." He leaned forward, his face inches from mine. "You're imagining things," he said, his voice low and menacing. "I haven't done anything wrong." I stood up, my hands shaking with fear and anger. "I know what you're doing," I said. "And I won't let you get away with it." He stood up too, towering over me. "You're making a mistake," he said. "You don't know who you're dealing with." I ran out of the conference room, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had to leave that job and that town as soon as possible. I went home and packed a few things, not even bothering to say goodbye to my coworkers. As I drove away from the manufactured housing community, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. But that relief was short-lived. A few days later, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a letter and a small box. The letter was written in his handwriting, and it made my blood run cold. "I told you not to mess with me," it read. "You can run, but you can't hide." I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a small, porcelain doll, its face twisted into a grotesque smile. I recognized it immediately as the same doll I had seen in his office. I threw the box and the letter away, but I knew that he wouldn't stop there. He was obsessed with me, and he wouldn't rest until he had me in his clutches. I moved to a new town, got a new job, and changed my phone number. But even then, I couldn't escape the feeling that he was watching me. I would see him in my dreams, standing over me with that same cold, dead look in his eyes. One night, I woke up to find him standing at the foot of my bed. He was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, and his face was obscured by shadows. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. He leaned over me, his face inches from mine. "I told you, you can run, but you can't hide," he whispered. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. I knew then that I couldn't keep running. I had to face him head-on and put an end to this once and for all. The next day, I called the police and told them everything. They took my statement, but they didn't seem to take me seriously. They told me that there wasn't much they could do unless he actually did something to harm me. I knew then that I was on my own. I started taking self-defense classes, and I bought pepper spray too. I knew I had to get out of there, but I couldn't leave without my phone. I searched the room for it, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, I spotted it on the desk next to the laptop. I quickly grabbed it and ran out of the room, making sure to lock the door behind me. As I made my way down the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't dare turn around, but I knew it was him. I started to run, but he was too fast. He caught up to me and grabbed me by the arm, dragging me into an empty room. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Now I'm going to have to punish you." He pushed me onto a bed in the corner of the room and started to tie me up with rope. I struggled, trying to break free, but it was no use. He was too strong. Tears streamed down my face as I realized what was about to happen. But then, suddenly, there was a loud banging on the door. "Open up." "Police," a voice shouted. He hesitated for a moment, and I took the opportunity to kick him in the stomach. He grunted in pain, but he didn't let go. The banging on the door continued, getting louder and more insistent. He seemed to give up. He released me and started to run towards the window. But before he could jump out, the door burst open, and several police officers stormed into the room. They quickly apprehended him and took him away in handcuffs. As they led him out of the room, he turned to me and gave me a chilling smile. "I'll be back," he said. "You'll see." I shuddered at the thought, but I was relieved to be safe. It was only later, when I was at home and had a chance to think about what had happened, that the full horror of the situation hit me. I had come so close to being another victim. And I realized that there were probably many other women out there who had fallen prey to his twisted schemes. I knew I had to do something to stop him. So, I went to the police and told them everything that had happened. They were able to track down some of his other victims and bring him to justice. But even though he was behind bars, I still couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over me. I knew that he would always be a part of my life, haunting me with his memory. Years have passed since that terrifying experience, but I still have nightmares about it from time to time. And even though I have moved on with my life and built a successful career, I can't help but wonder what might have happened if I hadn't been able to escape that day. The memory of that twisted man still haunts me, and I know that it always will. But I have learned to be strong, to never let my guard down, and to never forget the importance of staying safe.